A man on a mission with a plan to expand my vision. Yeah, it's either this or it's prison. I'm trying to be free and expand my wisdom. I gotta tell my story. I did it for the journey, the glory. Many men tried way before me. I had to do it bigger cause I had to make history. From the streets to the sea, far away, not a soul did I see. From Chesapeake up to Baffin Bay, my motto is hard work first and laugh and play. Now let's take a trip through the Northwest Passage. Some say I got a problem, I say it's a passion. I'm just trying to reach my goals before passing, and I'ma do what I wanna do without asking. It's my life, my right, so I fight for my dreams, no matter how hard it might seem. This is my pipe dream, my advice to get your mind right, find light and do the right thing, no matter the weather or whatever the night brings. Thunder and lightning, it's enlightening. Lost in the abyss, I can't even begin to explain how awesome this is. I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams. When I'm away, to wash away, I explore. I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams. When I'm away, to wash away, I explore. I've been
I am the tallest thing for a long, long way in any direction. It scares the crap out of me.
I'm looking for a challenge. I'm looking for a way to push myself, often mentally and physically, to my limits and see kind of what I'm made of and compare myself to some of the heroes that I've had.
His attempt is to solo circumnavigate the Americas nonstop. Well, there's a boat behind him, right? There's a crew no. He's by himself in a 27-foot boat attempting to accomplish this that no one else has accomplished. And then they would say, well, where's he gonna stop? And I said, no, the term nonstop means he is not going to drop anchor. And then they would sit back and it kind of filters through and they would say, you mean to tell me he's on a 27-foot sailboat with a year's supply or whatever of food, he's not gonna stop anywhere, and he's doing it entirely by himself? Yes, that's exactly right.
I don't think I ever made a conscious decision to want to be an adventurer or to go out on various ventures. It just was something that I have been doing for a long time. I guess I grew up doing a lot of that kind of stuff, although those adventures were not quite as healthy.
He would say, when I get out of here, I'm gonna go sail the world. I'm gonna go sail the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and nobody's gonna stop me.
Most people dream about crossing oceans and sailing around the world, and very few actually pull it off. To do it in a small boat, not a steel-hulled ship, is very difficult to do. So I kind of took it with a grain of salt with one thought. I like the idea of going around the Americas. I'm not sure that's really been done.
The small boat didn't worry me at all because actually it's easier to make sure a small boat's well maintained and in control and handle the gear on it. But it was just that single-handed, going into very dangerous waters and going non-stop.
In the little community, that's the sailing community of Annapolis. You know, the people that were in the know heard about it, and the talk was that he was crazy, that he was just a suicide mission, you know, and there was, why is anyone doing this? I mean, he's just gonna go out there and perish.
If you die doing what you love, it's not a tragedy.
Just sat down with him, I said, Matt, I have got to say goodbye to you because you might not make it. I might not get to see you again. And I want to tell you, I'm really proud of you because most people have dreams and they never follow their dreams.
When Matt Rutherford took off, I thought he was a crazy man. I absolutely thought he was bonkers. I thought he was batshit crazy.
I tried to talk him out last June on going on this trip. His sails weren't even there. I said, you're taking a boat out you've never even had a sail on? You gotta be kidding me.
I hadn't even sailed the boat when I left Annapolis. So going down the bay was kind of a, the first time kind of getting used to the boat a little bit. It was like the 110-mile test run.
The kid wasn't even tethered to the boat. My mom was gonna kill him. You're not tethered to the boat? No. I mean, he could have just flown off at any time.
I am heading out of Little Creek Inlet, and soon I'll be at the starting line. The immensity of the task ahead of me at times just seems like so much. It's just hard for me to wrap my mind around. It's hard for me to fully understand or accept that I'm going to be out here for another 300 days. Although I'll be feeling much better when I get through the Arctic and past Alaska and into the Pacific.
You have got to get some sleep, you've got to navigate, you've got to eat. When you're a solo sailor, you're a mechanic, you're the navigator, you're everything.
I had a couple of lines outside starting to shave through. I had a block fall off one of my reefing points. A lot of small problems become a big problem. So it's important to stop the small problems immediately. And so I keep going over the boat, checking things, making sure everything is tip-top. As good as it can be for a 38-year-old, 27-foot boat.
I always had a safety line off the back of my boat. I always had a way to get back on board the boat.
It's a little messy right now. I got a fuel bladder with 85 gallons of diesel in it. A bunch of other stuff, as you can see. Food all hidden behind all this stuff. The boat creaks and moans. My finger. Yummy.
The toilet seat broke in half in the beginning, but I have a very little butt, so I can just fit on half the toilet seat. I think the biggest concern with how heavily overladen the boat was. I was worried that, I'd end up ripping the rig out of the boat because the boat would be too heavy. But there was no way I could get around it. I needed the food, I needed the diesel. Well, it is important to have a working engine up in the Arctic because you do have quite a bit of light winds at times, and so having that engine is going to keep you moving when you don't have wind. Especially when you have pack ice, you need to work your way through. It's kind of hard to sail through that.
Because of the AIS unit, it gives me the ability to not worry about freighters. So this thing will start beeping like crazy if a freighter gets near me.
Normally when you're out at sea, it's like your world is so big. You can see out in 3 miles in every direction. You can see storms and squalls move by. 600-foot freighters look like tiny little toys out on the horizon. Of course, they're not toys. But when you sail in the fog, it's like your whole world all of a sudden becomes very small. And it's almost claustrophobic in a way. And it's really eerie.
Matt lives on the edge and always has, at least since he was in his early teens, because he has to.
It was a cold winter night, and I get a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, ma'am, do you know where your son is? And do you know where your car is? Well, my son's in bed sleeping and my car's in the garage. No, ma'am, this is the Macedonia Police Department. They were about 45 minutes away. And your son is up here with us right now.
Yeah, I used to take my parents' cars at night when I was a kid, before I was old enough to drive. I used to take them out on different missions,
And the police officer said, well, the only reason we stop them is he was so short in the driver's seat, and we followed him around quite a bit and kept an eye on him. And don't tell him, but he's a really good driver.
But, you know, it often involved some kind of trouble. You know, I mean, we weren't taking these cars out just to drive them around the block.
Matt was always very stubbornly independent. He liked doing things best if he did it himself. He went through a period where he decided that all he was going to wear was boots, rubber boots, and that's all he'd wear. He wouldn't wear anything else, in the house or out of the house. When Matt decided something, it was done.
He was offended if he had to order off the children's menu. He gets up in the middle of the restaurant, stands up on the booth, and shouts out to the entire restaurant, "I am a man."
Conceptually, Matt was well ahead of his age group. In fact, when he was in preschool, they tested him, and he was tested out at, let's say, at 4 at the level of maybe a 3rd grader or a 4th grader conceptually. He understood the big pictures very well. He had some learning disabilities that more than we knew at the time, but at that time it was essentially dysgraphia. It was one thing. He had a very difficult time formulating letters and doing small motor problems, let's say.
According to my mom, I couldn't read till I was in 5th grade. So I've had a lot of problems. I didn't know my left from my right for a long time, I know that. And I didn't know how to tie my shoes forever. I had a lot of problems with hyperactivity. I couldn't sit still in class. I, of course, daydreamed a lot, and I'd be sitting in class, but my mind was somewhere else. But what really made it the hardest was just the simple inability to sit still.
It was still in the dark ages for students with learning disabilities, and it was hard. You know, I had to deal with each teacher on an individual basis. Some were better than others. In 4th grade, we hit a wall with, I can't remember her name, but she was not a flexible teacher. And what she expected for one student, she expected for all. And that's when the tics really started coming out. And they started with coughing. And he had this nervous cough going on and clearing his throat.
I didn't fit in very well in elementary school and in junior high. They didn't know what to do with me at schools, and a lot of the other kids didn't know what to make of me because I was different.
We had him brain mapped, and the neurologist came out and said, "Your son's biochemistry is way off the charts. And I really recommend we start a regimen of psychotropics."
So they gave me a lot of Ritalin at a young age, but Ritalin was problematic. Ritalin gave me side effects, tics, and so that doesn't help. And so they started giving me a pill to counteract that. But that pill, Inderol, gave me low blood pressure and made me have numb toes and fingers in the summertime. So it was messing with my blood pressure. So they gave me another pill to counteract the Inderol, to counteract the Ritalin, and then they started feeding me Prozac when I was 13. And so I was taking fistful of pills 3 times a day, all these crazy pills.
He was beginning to really resent this place that he went to where he was ridiculed by other kids because of his tics.
School just wasn't really his gig.
I was very depressed. I remember when I was 11 years old and 10 years old, I was supposed to write a journal or something, and all I ever did was write about killing myself.
There is a chemical difference. There's not enough dopamine availability. Dopamine is one of the key neurotransmitters involved in ADHD. What happens is the individual is looking for ways to activate their brain. So they find things that stimulate them, whether it's caffeine or nicotine, sometimes alcohol or pot, those are more common, or cocaine. And then there are more optimal forms of stimulation. People will do things that are kind of exciting and risk-taking, adrenaline kind of producing activities.
I'm surrounded in fog. It's been raining and there's been thunder and fog all day. Because of the water breaking over the boat, a lot of places leaked. I had a wet bed last night. I had a wet pillow, a wet sleeping bag. Everything was wet. I imagine I'll be dealing with this weather for another, 5 days. Hopefully not too much longer. I get tired of the fog. I like to be able to see, and I don't have a radar.
God damn it! fucking water maker just blew up, and now I have no water maker, and it's gonna screw in my whole trip up. I don't want to go to land. I have adjusted to the ocean. I'm in the rhythm, I'm in the zone, everything is really good, and this has just totally come in and kicked it right in the balls.
I got a frantic call from Matt because by then he'd realized that this particular piece of equipment was a make or break for the trip. I mean, it was his sole supply of fresh water.
I had a sat phone, which I hadn't been using much, or nor did I use much because the minutes are expensive. But under these circumstances, it was a lifesaver. He said, well, call me back in 24 hours. So I called him back, and he had found a water maker. He had found a guy that would bring it out to me in a little boat in Newfoundland and kind of set the whole thing up.
This is day 20, I think. Newfoundland is right over there. The water maker is not going to come for another 48 hours. Everything is good. Got the water maker. Yesterday was a beautiful day. The fog went away, the sun came out, it was gorgeous. They gave me a bottle of Screech, which is some liquor, some socks, some banana bread, a newspaper. So they hooked me up with some stuff, some nice treats. But yeah, that's it. I got the water maker, and I'm back in the fog, and I've been in the fog since last night. And it sucks, but whatever. I'll be getting up to where the icebergs are soon, so I need this fog to go away so I can see icebergs. My boat just got hit by the biggest wave of the trip as I was trying to set that up. I thought it'd be a good time to get some footage because I hadn't heard a wave break over the boat in some times. And a big old wave came, damn near swept me off my feet. I had to grab onto my backstay. Damn it. I had to grab onto my backstay while my feet were out. I got completely soaked. I didn't have any foul weather gear on because I hadn't heard a wave break for like an hour. I figured I'd just go out, be real quick, and come back. Always a mistake. I should have took the 2 minutes to put on the foul weather gear because now all of my clothes are completely soaked that I was wearing. It filled my cockpit with water. My whole boat was underwater for a minute. This boat leaks like a sieve. This boat leaks terribly. Everything is soaked. You can see, look at this. My Ray Marine got knocked off. A big wave hit yesterday and it threw me, and I hit this and I tore it off the wall on accident, and I got it bungeed off right now. I'm about to have a drink of Screech because I just had dinner and I'm just tired and frustrated, and I just want a hot shower, some dry clothing, a nice couch and television to watch a movie I've never seen, you know, like a nice bottle of red wine, maybe some bread and cheese or something.
Mayday. Report man overboard. Man was last seen at 042200. Coordinate universal time. The position 4616 north. 05146 west. Request all vessels in the area to keep a sharp lookout and report any sightings to the nearest Coast Guard radio station. This is St. John's Coast Guard Radio, over.
Now that is a sobering situation. Some guy fell overboard in the fog at night, and I probably drowned somewhere about 50 miles from here.
You realize before you leave that you might die. You know, you realize that you might not come back when you leave the dock, and you accept that. So once you've accepted it, there's nothing to be afraid of.
It would be hypocritical for me to try to ask for some kind of help
from a higher power, which on land I wouldn't ask for that help normally. But I grew up in a cult, and it kind of rained on my religious parade. Dorthea was cult leader, which is odd. How many cults do you know of that are run by females? Sometime in the early 60s, from her story, God came down out the heavens and made her the most enlightened person on the planet. The Bible was never taken literally. It was just a centerpiece. Now, there was other philosophies going on, a lot of Eastern philosophies, and it was about life force, and life force, you get it from God somehow. So if you get sick, it's not that the bacteria or disease that made you sick, it's your life force is all screwed up. You see, you shouldn't be sick if God really likes you. So when people get sick, you shouldn't go to man, you should go to God. Of course, when she was in her 80s, she got a pacemaker the first second she had any problems with her heart, but she was a hypocrite and a charlatan.
When I met and fell in love and married Doug Rutherford, he was already part of this group. And so I accepted her and the people as extended family. It was a small cult, it was Bible-based, but we'd meet at people's homes, and you know, for a cult, it was very much like Wonder Bread.
We got together regularly, Saturdays for breakfast, Sundays for what we call church, Wednesdays for Bible study. It was really the centerpiece of our life.
As she got older and her health started to deteriorate, I think that she started tightening emotional reins more on people. If you have the social network and then you don't follow the rules, whatever rules there are imposed on you, then you lose your social network. And that part, they've been like family members. It's a very strong method of control.
Dorthea had this way of bringing you up to a level, and from what I understand and from what I witnessed, and then tearing you down. And making people feel like they were nothing, like they were worthless.
Like in a couple, there'd be one that would get picked on more and one that would be favored more. And sometimes she'd flip it. So if she was picking on me, Doug would be the golden child. If Doug was the one getting on the hot seat, which is what she called it and what they call it in most cults, if Doug was on the hot seat, then I was doing great. And she would do that with siblings too. Well, she thought Matt was amazing. And Rachel was strong-willed and needed to be squelched.
After we left the cult, things kind of fell apart, started falling apart for my mom and dad. I think the cult gave them structure in their marriage.
When you leave group, you lose everything socially. I mean, it's a tremendous, wrenching experience. We were all trying to feel our way forward.
And I ended up in counseling right away because I had almost a breakdown.
And I no longer trusted anything they had to say because I realized everything they had brought me up in was a lot of lies, and there wasn't any explanation for it. We didn't have a recuperation period afterwards where my parents explained to me, this is what you went through and this is the way it really is, and something, anything.
Doug and I were both probably too caught up in what else is going on between us, what else is going on, where do we fit in the world, and what are we going to do about Matt, who's now starting to really struggle with school.
The fallout from that made me a very angry and confused individual as a preteen, which I was in a hospital rehab program when I was 13 for drug abuse, which I look at 13-year-olds and I can't imagine some 13-year-old being in a freaking rehab program for drug abuse. But I was doing things well beyond my time, and I was doing it full on. I guess if you're gonna do something, you might as well do it 110%. So I was doing drugs 110%, and I was being as much of a street punk as humanly possible.
Welcome to the land of ice and snow. The Arctic! Icebergs. Okay, that is my first iceberg. The first iceberg of the journey. I don't know if you can see it. See it way out there?
About a mile out there is the first iceberg.
Now how cool is that? Been a beautiful day. I've been heading over towards Greenland, trying to get away from the ice pack. I got away from the southern edge yesterday, so I'm tacking back and forth up this corridor because I have northerly winds right now, so I'm just kind of making very slow headway. You know, it's interesting. I don't know where I feel like I sailed to another planet at this point. That would do some damage. Beautiful, huh? What the hell is that?
I just heard a really loud noise from over there. I have no idea what it is, but it was loud.
That is a big iceberg. And I've got icebergs all around me right now. I can see an iceberg right out this window. I got another iceberg off my bow about a half mile. I'm heading right at it right now, which I'll change course in a minute. But I'm in the ice. It's beautiful. I'm happy to be here. I feel all amped up and ready for the passage.
Whenever he's interested in something, he has the amazing ability to hyper-focus. It's one of the advantages of his form of ADHD, and it gives them almost superhuman abilities.
Been really crazy and really busy lately with all the icebergs and the wind and dodging them and trying not to sink the boat. But I'm up here at 75-27 north. So I've sailed about as far north as I'm going to sail. I've been trying to work my way around this giant ice patch that's pretty much all the Baffin Bay is covered in ice. So I had to sail pretty far north, staying right along the coast of Greenland in order to get over the top of this ice patch to get to the mouth of the Northwest Passage. Right now it's 10 o'clock at night. I couldn't tell you it's 10 o'clock at night. I couldn't tell you if it was 10 o'clock in the morning. The sun is always up, so whatever, I'm always up. But last night it got kind of crazy. My fuel bladder started leaking fuel. So it was panic, you know, and I started filling up everything I could find with diesel. Jerry jugs, water jugs, my solar shower got diesel in it. My bottles of liquor I emptied out, put diesel in it. Everything got diesel in it. I do have a couple bottles of good scotch left. I'm not going to mess with those for anything. So the idea was to get enough diesel out of the bladder that I could raise the end of the bladder up that had the leak and keep it above, you know, and force all the diesel to the other side of the bladder, and then the leak would be up in the air and it wouldn't matter. So that's why you see this right here. But both sides were leaking, so I had to do it to both sides. So I now have a purchase here and I have a purchase over here. Both sides of my fuel bladder kind of sticking up, putting all the fuel in the middle of it. So you can imagine being on watch with lots of little icebergs, big icebergs, 30 knots of wind behind you, steaming along, in the pouring rain, in the fog, can't see nothing. These little icebergs, they barely show on the surface, but they're gigantic. You know, they're still like the size of a school bus underwater.
In a moment when there's peril involved or danger of some sort, the ADHD brain actually becomes optimized because it is a form of stimulation. So that could be a good kind of brain style to have when you're going to be in situations that are somewhat treacherous or somewhat difficult, perilous.
I caught my first felony when I was 14 and drunk out of my skull.
He broke into a neighbor's house and he sort of ransacked their bar and got caught.
They had a massive bar in their basement, and evidently I drank a bunch of their liquor and passed out and woke up in a police station, and I got a burglary charge because of it. Being locked up doesn't really rehabilitate anybody.
He was getting involved in more trouble with the law. He was getting into drugs, street drugs, selling drugs. He was, doing a lot of things. And it was the juvenile detention center. Doug, they didn't even call me Mr. Rutherford. Hey, Doug. Hey, Smitty, what's up? Matt again? Yep.
When he was younger, I used to say, okay, if we make it to 25 and he's not dead or in prison, we might be okay.
So from 8th grade to 11th grade, there was no real school in my life. It was me on the streets being crazy. I learned how to play chess though. I got really good at that because I spent a lot of my time in a coffee shop playing chess with guys with giant gray beards who could whoop on me.
He had his books because we were officially doing homeschooling, and he did go through quite a bit of the material. We had more success with that. In fact, the school district, they came to me with a plan, actually said, we want to do something for Matt here at school because we have several other students now who want to do homeschooling and go to the same little cafe and do their schooling, and we can't do that.
So he went into a resource room. Matt really resented a resource room because, and I think for a good reason, a lot of the kids in there are truly slow learners.
That's when he really met a lot of the hoods, those kids, and for them living on the street, that was a badge of honor.
The group of people that I fell into would be considered the wrong group, the bad kids. But nobody was a bad influence on me because I was a bad influence by myself. Nobody was like, hey Matt, let's go smoke this joint. I was already ready.
His friends would come over if my parents were away, and I was the one fervently defending the homestead and would occasionally had to chase his friends out of the house with a baseball bat because they were doing things that were inappropriate, like breaking furniture.
I was never like a violent criminal. I wasn't out beating people up or anything when I was a kid. But, I would steal radios or stole some cars.
Every time Matt went before a judge, the judge said, I want you to tell me every person you know, and I want you to, and Matt always said the same thing to him. No.
The judge said to me after they put Matt, took him away for solitary for 2 weeks, he said, I really admire his loyalty, but I think it's misguided.
Matt was, from the very early time, not just a tremendous amount of work to help him to get where he needed to go. But I went through years of hearing nothing but negatives about Matt.
He'd been in a cult, and we'd left that a number of years before. And we had learning problems. And we had a proclivity towards some depression, and he had some substance abuse issues.
And it becomes a witch's brew, And I was very angry. I really, ultimately, though, what I hated the most was myself. I mean, I was angry at the world, but the impetus came from the hatred of my own self. Feeling like I had no self-worth or something. A lot of teenagers can claim, can say, oh, I was angry at the world and I caused a lot of trouble. But I was kind of on a different level of that. Like, I was committing felonies on a regular basis and seriously angry at the world, like ready to go crazy.
Now, let's take a trip through the Northwest Passage. Some say I got a problem, I say it's a passion. I'm just trying to reach my goals before passing, and I'ma do what I wanna do without asking. It's my life, my right, so I fight for my dreams, no matter how hard it might seem. This is my pipe dream. My advice to get your mind right, find light and do the right thing, no matter the weather or whatever the night brings. Thunder and lightning, it's enlightening. Lost in the abyss, I can't even begin to explain how awesome this is. I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams. When I'm away, to wash away way I explore. I've been all around the world and back around the world to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams. When I'm away, to wash away, I explore.
I started getting interested in Northwest Passage, reading stories about the explorers who went through there. Originally looking for a route, a quicker route to China and to India. Nobody knew where exactly they were going, or they had no, maps or charts, or they didn't know what the archipelago looked like. So they're kind of just blindly going into the ice, hoping to find a way through. And expedition after expedition got trapped in the ice. Many, many more people died in the Northwest Passage than in Antarctica.
Matt's been an explorer all of his life. I always felt he was born in the wrong century, that he should have been in the days of the tall ships. And I don't even know why I felt that way, because we lived in landlocked Ohio.
Ernest Shackleton was an English explorer that tried to get to the South Pole on a couple of different trips. His boat was crushed in the ice, and his men and him lived on the ice for a couple of years, and he was able to get all of his men back to safety, and nobody died. And people like Shackleton could be in very difficult situations mentally and physically and still be rather chip and cheery. At the end of every blog entry, I would use Shackleton's family motto. It's Latin, but what it basically means is through endurance we conquer, or by endurance we conquer, depending on who translates it.
Okay, this is day 63, August 15th, 2011. I'm at 6827 north, 10320 west, and I've been busy navigating the passage. Weather's been nice, not a lot of wind. I'm doing a lot more motoring than I am sailing. But I've made it through Simpson Strait, some real technical navigating, pretty strong currents, but I made it through okay. Made it down Franklin Strait, everything. There was a little bit of pack ice, but no big deal. I'm in Queen Maud Gulf now. There's some pack ice in front of me, but I've already navigated most of the islands that are on the eastern half, and now I'm getting down the western half. There's this pack ice I have to get through. After this is probably the last pack ice I have to deal with. Then I'm done. Then I'm off and I'm on my way.
Yesterday the wind picked up, and it continued to pick up through the day, through the night, and through today until it was blowing a gale. I tried to cook a big meal, and it went all over my floor, which really sucks. And I'm hungry, and I can't cook, and I've got food all over the floor, like mocking me.
The problem with Arctic gales, or the Arctic in general, is the water is so cold that if you stick your hand in the water, you get a burning sensation instead of a cold sensation. So, if I get cold, I just rub my hands together or jump in circles, or I don't know. You can't really move around much either because the boat is so small and it's moving all the time. So you got to be careful of that. If I was running my engine became the world's largest hand and foot warmer. But then again, your hands are cold and you end up burning your hands on the engine sometimes because you don't realize how hot the thing is.
Got about 172 miles before I get to Barrow Point, Alaska. And then I'm done with the Northwest Passage and I can start heading south again.
When you're dealing with 50-hour watches, everything kind of slows down and your brain slows down. So I try to slow my body down to about half the speed I normally would function at, because I figure my brain is only working at half the speed, so therefore I make my body go at half the speed, and it kind of keeps them in line. So, but yeah, it's kind of, it's a wacky world of sleep deprivation. As you get further north, the days get longer, and then all of a sudden, the sun never sets. It's kind of interesting to see the sun going around and around and around on the horizon. There is a weird quality to vision up there too. I don't know exactly the elements that do it. Little things look big, big things look little. You gotta completely let go of attachments to life and land and everything. As long as you remain optimistic and you just keep enduring, then you can make it through.
I had an epiphany. I was sitting in cell 36, I believe, with Smith, and my fourth time being locked up. And so we do our time together. We both get out. Now, it was like 3 months later, I get arrested and locked up again. And I get put back in cell 36, the same exact cell. And I look over, and the next day, Smith gets arrested and put back in the same cell. Not just that, but there's 3 beds in a cell. Each ones are numbered. And I got the same bed, he got the same bed. It was like we're in the same cell, in the same designated bed. And 3 months after we just get out, it's like, didn't we just do this, man? Like, come on, Smith. Like, we just did this. Like, what's going on? Like some weird deja vu. Like, why? I mean, we're in the same cell together. So to me, that was just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back or whatever. It was like, this is ridiculous. If I keep doing this, I'm going to spend my life in prison. I'm going to keep, and it's a pointless life. It's a life that goes nowhere.
Matt was ready to change Matt. And Eagle Rock was the best of all possible environments. There's a lot of student input. It's a very wonderful place to end up for healing, emotional healing for kids who've been in that at-risk area.
Eagle Rock School is a year-round boarding school designed to help young people for whom success has been elusive. All students at Eagle Rock School are here on a full scholarship, and there's a lot of service work, there's a lot of community living, there's a wilderness trip that starts it off. We get to help shape and shift the environment in which they're located, to constantly challenge them to discover who they are and do something of value with that discovery.
And I actually learned for the first time in my life that I enjoy learning, because I always hated school.
My first recollections of Matt are that he was not very educated. I mean, he was street smart and he knew how to survive. And he knew how to protect himself physically, emotionally.
He kind of had like that hard kind of look, kind of like, you know, don't mess with me kind of thing.
Once he decided that he wanted to align himself with our basic fundamental values at Eagle Rock School, he decided to be an avatar of those values, and he began to question and confront other students on whether they were fully committed to their own lives and their own education.
And then I began to get other feedback from people who just said, he's this like magical kid, like where there's a need, all of a sudden you turn around and there's Matt. At that place, at that time, and you say to yourself, how did he know?
At Eagle Rock, he ended up teaching 2 classes on the Vietnam War, a course on conflict resolution, and a course on the history of governments.
Look at this. There's some inspiring things in the manifesto. You can drop like all the propaganda that was given to you for so long about communism being bad, and you can just sit down and read. There's some really good points about looking out for the basic proletariat worker, you know, looking out for the poor people basically, and not oppressing the poor people. They're really good points. But why am I...
What made Matt stand out for me was his curiosity about the world.
One day at Eagle Rock, as I was in the library looking over an atlas, and it just kind of hit me that if you had a sailboat, you could potentially sail to about 80% of the countries on the planet.
He went to Thailand on a special program that we helped to find. And his world really opened up at that point, and he began to see himself as a citizen of the world.
Matt had some wonderful mentoring teachers at Eagle Rock. James Sherman was one. James and I would have these talks together because he really admired Matt, like a son. And he said to me, you know what we've all come to understand about Matt? He's got more balls than a boatload of Marines. Nobody I've ever met has more courage than Matt.
The ocean often would pick up the Alpen Vega and shake the shit out of it and then throw it hard, and everything inside would just go everywhere, including me.
Biggest knockdown I've ever had. Nearly capsized. Shredded my Dodger, it busted my knee, put water over my floorboards, and yeah. I'm just fucking pissed, and I don't know. I just haven't been in a great mood for the last week, I guess. I shouldn't, I need to keep my spirits up.
Shit. It's been more than 100 days since Matt Rutherford has walked on dry land. Alexander Gutierrez in Unalaska reports.
The rules for contact were so strict that I couldn't get on his boat to interview him, and I had to shout out questions from the supply boat. Rutherford seemed relieved to get the new gear, but he was more excited for the hot pizza and the cold beer that we ferried over.
It's almost so good and so strange that you can't even wrap your mind around it.
He's had to put out a fire and cope with gear failures in Arctic waters. Despite the harsh conditions, Rutherford takes plenty of joy in the voyage.
I don't got to worry about bills. I ain't got to worry about nothing. I got to go to work. But then again, it's a lot of work to be out in the ocean alone. So, I mean, it goes both ways. But I got no boss. My boss is Poseidon.
The longest stretch of open water would be Alaska to Cape Horn, because it's about 10,000 miles.
It's the pain in the ass part of the trip. Very uncomfortable. I'm just tired of beating into the seas. And you almost wonder how the boat can take it. I come down off a wave and there's this terrible crunch kind of sound of all the wood, and I mean, you just think it's just gonna, things are just gonna shatter. Like the wood is just gonna split, or the fiberglass is gonna come apart, or the boat's gonna come apart at the seams, or I don't know. I guess that's why people go through the Panama Canal and go around the world in the trade winds. So, you know, it's important that I don't push the boat too hard. And, you know, I'm not in a race here. The Cape Horn's not going anywhere.
I've always been self-taught with everything. I didn't have much interest in reading a book about sailing that reads like VCR instructions, you know, so I figured I'll just go out and raise the sails and figure it out. In 2003, I bought a little 1969 25-foot Coronado, and that was in Trapp, Maryland. I was living in Columbus, Ohio at the time. I bought it off the internet, sight unseen, which is a terrible idea. You never buy a boat without seeing a boat. But I didn't know nothing about nothing. And so I just took off with a girlfriend down the coast to the Florida Keys. So neither of us really knew what we were doing. So I made a lot of mistakes and ran aground and got hit by lightning and hurricanes in 2004. But that's how I started sailing. And then I bought a 26 Pearson, sailed that around Florida for a while, and then I was able to get my 323 Pearson. Most of the countries in the world are connected to the ocean. So therefore, if you learn how to sail and you get good enough at it, then you can pretty much travel anywhere you want, drop an anchor, and live at a very low expense. So I guess there's a freedom to it. I sailed across the Gulf of Mexico and the Bahamas and did the entire East Coast of the United States single-handed before eventually taking that Pearson from Annapolis to Europe, Africa, the Caribbean and back, which was a 2-year trip, about 15,545 miles.
I had a very hard time when I was sailing in Europe, because although I was accomplishing this goal that I worked so hard to accomplish, I was absolutely, completely heartbroken, depressed, sad, and miserable, because I had lost the woman I loved, and I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to be alone.
By the time I get to the equator in another 4 days, there's a chance I'll be at 28 West. I was at 28 West 12 days ago. I've been close hauled all day, down to a second reef point and a little bit of jib. Very uncomfortable. I can't really go outside much because being close hauled, you get the maximum amount of spray in the cockpit, and if I stick my head out there for very long, I get wet. You know, I get like bed sores almost on my butt because I can't stand up, so I'm either sitting down or laying down, and it's so hot that I get rashes because everything's sweaty. And besides that, I've just been reading and just trying not to get too entirely bored of doing the same things every day, you know, the day-to-day monotony.
The Kindle got ruined in a gale in the Gulf of Alaska, but I had about 10 books on the little iPod. I spent 3 months reading The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire by Gibbons, which is like 9 volumes. You read it one paragraph at a time on an iPod Touch, you know. I brought a shotgun with me, partially because if I became shipwrecked in the Arctic, I would have to defend myself from polar bears trying to eat me. But mostly I brought the shotgun with the idea of if I ran out of food, I could live off of seabirds. And at one point, early on in the trip, I actually shot a seabird and ate it, and it was the most disgusting thing I think I've ever eaten. And all the hot sauce in the world would not get rid of that nasty flavor. So luckily, I had enough freeze-dried food to make it.
For some reason, the last 4 or 5 days, 6, 7 days, I don't even know how long it's been, but I've been forgetting, I've been having a hard time remembering what I've been doing in the last 24 hours. What's been happening? It's just everything has just become such a blur.
There are definitely sailors that have lost their mind at sea alone. Some of them in the doldrums. Problem with the doldrums, you don't feel like you're being productive. You're going backwards and drifting around.
Still got an insane rash on my crotch. You know, I would take a picture of it because it's so incredible. I mean, it just looks so fucked up. It's even spreading to my armpits. I need some of that prickly heat powder. But goddamn, and it hurts.
Well, I started getting tube barnacles, and a normal barnacle grows on a boat that's not moving. A tube barnacle grows on a boat that's underway. But a couple of times I leaned over the boat to cut them off, and I couldn't cut them off because they were my friends and they were hanging out with me, and they were the only things that were hanging out with me, so I let them grow.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and something, something, something.
All right, I don't know any more of the song. Merry Christmas, it's Christmas time. And I got some good 15-year-old scotch, some Highland Park 15-year-old, some nice ham, canned ham, cooking up right now. Ho, 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 and all that good stuff. My bilge pump died. It's completely dead. I take a lot of water on this boat. I mean, I can fill the bilge in maybe 6 to 8 hours. I've got about 1,000,001 leaks. There looks like a gale on the 6th, and I'm going to be near the Horn on the 6th, so I'd like to be at least 10-15 miles past the Horn when the gale starts, I hope. Unfortunately, I lost my buoyant safety line. They must have wrapped around the wind vane rudder and rubbing up against it chewed itself off, and now I got this little stub. I'm gonna have to make a new one.
He called me before he went around Cape Horn. He hurt himself. I don't know if he's told anybody, but he fell during maybe some storm. And he told me, Mom, I don't know, but I may have cracked a rib. I slipped and I fell, and I don't remember all the details, but it scared him. There's nothing he could have done. It didn't puncture a lung or anything, but it hurt like crazy. And he called quite a few people, and just, we chit-chatted, but it was like, he's possibly touching base because he might not make it around the Horn.
It's called the Sailor's Mount Everest, and there's a reason for that. The whole time you're coming down the west coast of Chile, you're against the lee shore. In other words, the wind is blowing you against the land. You have no room for error. If you make any mistakes, you're going to crash into the continent of South America. The low pressure systems spin continuously around the bottom of the planet, unimpeded by any land mass. So they're able to really get some force going as they start to spin, and they become very, very powerful storms with very, very strong winds.
I need to push the boat hard. I need to get the hell out of here, because if you hang out here for too long, I'm going to get hit by a storm that's so big that it's just going to sink me and it'll kill me. It's time to get my ass around the Horn. I have the weather window, and it's time to do it. But yeah, I'm going around Cape Horn as I speak right now. It's been a beautiful day. Cape Horn is beautiful, this whole thing. I haven't seen land in a long, long time. I haven't seen land since Alaska. This is where the Pacific meets the Atlantic. It'd be nice to start something new, heading north.
I always felt that I could do that I could do these big sailing trips. But the problem wasn't with my abilities or my belief in my abilities. The problem was finances. How am I going to buy the boat to do it?
And he met this guy named Don Backey, who was wheelchair-bound, who ran this nonprofit, and volunteering, taking disabled folks out to enjoy the beauty of sailing.
And on 3, we go up over. 1, 2, 3.
When I'm in control, I mean, it's just so much fun. You just catch the wind, and when the boat starts to move during a race, it's just an awesome feeling. And that's what you live for.
I just think it's important to go out and help people. This was a situation that involved sailing, which is something I'm really passionate about, and helping people, and it put the two together.
This red-headed fellow shows up and says, I'd like to help. And he says, I've sailed the Atlantic, and that's when we pricked up our ears. And we started putting him to work.
So most of the stuff I do is the work on the boats that they sell. I help them get them ready so they can sell their boats. Nobody really wants to do a bottom job, and nobody really wants to install a new head. So that's the kind of stuff I do.
He just had a reservoir of capabilities, He had no problem with painting bottoms and scraping and all that dirty stuff, but he could diagnose, the outboard problems, or something broke, he could fix it. He was really gifted that way.
So I was sitting over at Whitehall with a local boat yard here in Annapolis, and painting the bottoms of boats that they were trying to sell.
We were chatting about the Arctic and Shackleton. He knows a great deal about all the explorer lives and things like this. And we were leaning up against a old folk boat that we had been donated.
And I said, well, hey Don, why don't you let me take this boat up to the Northwest Passage, and we'll raise some money for crab.
And so I said, well, okay, I'll give it to you, you can have it.
And then somebody called and said, who also volunteers for crab, Lee and Colin, and they said, well, why don't you take the Alban Vega? And so I kind of said, well, why don't I just, once I get through the Northwest Passage, continue on sailing around the Americas. I went around dumpster diving around Annapolis, and actually replaced quite a bit of both of my bulkheads with wood I pulled out of dumpsters. Gaining sponsorship is often one of the most difficult parts of any trip. We wrote 800 letters off the different random people that was on Crab's list, and it ended up costing us more money in postage than what we got back from those letters.
People thought we were crazy. We got a lot of stuff saying, you're sending him to his death and all kinds of stuff.
But some people still believed in me enough to put new rigging or sails, or help out with a wind vane or whatever. You need your boat to steer itself. I mean, I'm not out there steering it. 95% of the trip it was steering for me. Predict Wind gave me a satellite communicator, they call it. It has a tracking device, so the little red dot on the website so people could track and see my position. It also has a very basic email function, and it gives you weather reports.
I learned about Matt Rutherford initially from an article in the local newspaper. He was giving a seminar to explain the trip, and I think to maybe do some fundraising for the trip. I introduced myself to Matt, asked him about what he was going to do for food, and he was very perplexed. And I said, well, why don't you come over to my house and I can show you some food that might be a solution for you. We were able to provide him with about 780 pounds of freeze-dried food.
The whole thing from start to finish was about 8-10 months, from having that kind of aw shucks idea to his going off, leaving the dock. I don't think the glory aspect of it entered his mind at all. It was really to do something for somebody else and to do it for himself, you know, just for the satisfaction.
After Cape Horn, after being at sea for about 220 days, in some ways I didn't want to return. I just wanted to stay out in the ocean forever. And there's a sense of freedom, this kind of ultimate freedom that you experience when you've been alone at sea for that long. And you just want to stay out there sailing in your own little world forever. And had my boat not been falling apart around me, there's a chance that I might still be sailing right now. A mahi popped up next to the boat, and I was going to shoot it with an arrow because it was right next to me. And I got ready to shoot it and pull back the arrow, and then another mahi popped up next to it. Mahi made for life, and if you kill one of them, then the other one will kind of roam the ocean alone forever. So at the last second, I hesitated, and I'd end up not killing the mahi. I ended up not fishing anymore the rest of the trip after that. That was the end.
I answered some questions from a reporter from the Washington Post today, and yeah, he seems excited to do an article about the trip, which is good. Nice to talk to somebody. I haven't talked to anybody in a while. So yeah, we'll see if that helps raise some money for the, you know, the trip and all that for the organization. Hopefully it will.
Two out of 3 GPS units broke, the AIS broke, engine broke, VHF broke, my mast was grinding pretty badly, my bulkheads were warped, I was taking on water below the water line. So again, I just called Simon, and a little dinghy came out and threw me some stuff, and then they took off. But I came within about 2 miles of Brazil, so I could see the houses, I could see the cars, I could see the little people walking on the beaches.
About your adventure? Well, it's 260 days at sea. Today, about 23,000 miles through the Arctic and around
When I got French Guiana, not far from the mouth of the Amazon, after I passed that, I'm moving good. I wake up in the morning, like 2 in the morning, and I see a big black bow towering over me. My engine had been broke for a long time at this point, and because of the light winds, the boat was moving very slowly. Like I was trying to move the boat, and I was like, come on, man, move.
And they didn't see my nav lights, they didn't see me on the radar, they didn't know I was there. They never knew. They would have ran me right over, smashed me into a million little pieces, and no one on board would have known any better. And sort of freaked me out what it did. I mean, I'm really lucky I woke up to take a piss and check for freighters.
Matt was getting closer and closer to his finish line, and I tracked him down about 600 miles out. I was very excited to see him, of course. It had been a while. I didn't really know what to expect.
Matthew! Matt!
He looked amazingly fit. He still had a tremendous sense of humor, mostly at my expense. And again, he was getting light on food, so we had spare food and we put it all into a ice box and floated it across to him with some spare batteries.
Don't tell me that ain't cool, man. I don't want to hear one complaint.
Oh, he's going to toss back to us, but we didn't send him duct tape. You'll have to throw him the roll of duct tape.
I was in a much bigger, more comfortable, faster boat, of course, so we sailed alongside for a few hours, talking, and then I left him.
Your AIS doesn't work, right?
Yeah, it's broken, and I got no battery power anyway. Everything is broken, man.
Excuses, excuses.
After seeing people, I feel charged up, like I could be out here for another couple of months or something. Just a little bit of human contact, you know, makes a big difference. But yeah, and yeah, you know, this boat's just been through a lot. It's fallen apart. So I hope I can finish this trip without any more strong winds. You know, I'd rather have nice weather, of course. I'd rather finish it. I mean, you know, I'm tired. You know, it's 301 days, for God's sake. I'm freaking tired.
We're going to try to ease him into it gradually, that he's not just going to come home, step off the boat, tie the boat up, and be done. That there are people, that this has grown a lot bigger than he ever expected.
Mr. President, I've come to the floor today to speak about a truly remarkable American. A truly remarkable visionary, a dreamer, an adventurer, a doer, most importantly, a young man who has devoted himself to service to others, far and above the normal call of duty.
I still have a hard time putting my son to these laudatory words. Matt, to would have imagined he would have taken that kind of a turn, never saw that one coming.
That is the little dot that I've been staring at for the last 300 and some days. It's tiny.
The wind isn't doing hardly anything out here. Now I could try to get on the other tack and head back out that way. Yeah, well, I knew this was going to happen. I was going to sit here and stare at the finish line.
Because the wind had died and the bay was flushing out, it pushed me for 16 miles the wrong direction, south. So after 308 days alone on a boat and roughly 27,000 miles, I nearly wound up shipwrecked on a beach within sight of the finish line. The next morning, when the sun came up, the winds picked up. Now, they were headwinds, and they were strong, 25 to 30 knots. But I could at least work my way up into them, get through the bay, get through the mouth, through the finish line. And as I was doing it, waves were crashing all over me, and I was completely soaking wet. Well, I didn't care one bit.
What Matt has shown is that you can do it with nothing but yourself. And that's really all he had. I mean, he had a second, third-hand boat that was falling apart before he left, but he had himself.
Well, he's right up there with all of the great heroes in maritime history in the state of Maryland as well as in the United States. He is the first person to do this on his own. So he really is a hero in our country, perhaps around the world.
You know, you want to get young people to have a spirit of adventure and challenging the forces of nature. There's just something that does wonders to the human spirit, and Matt has done that. He's given us all this sense that we can do more than what we think we can.
Matt's quest was so pure, and he pulled it off with such style and panache, and he did it for a great cause and organization. I'm blown away by what Matt did. I was his biggest skeptic, and now I'm his biggest fan. What he has done is a voyage for the ages.
I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find
my dreams when I'm away. To wash away, I explore. I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams when I'm away. To wash away, I explore. I've been all around the world and back, all around the world and back, all around the world and back. I've been all around the world and back, world and back, world and back. I've been all around the world and back, all around the world and back, all around the world and back. I've been all around the world and back, world and back, world and back. I've been all around the world and back, world and back, world and back. I've been all around the world and back. For gold, it was a mission to get rich, I do it for soul. They thought that I was a misfit that would probably fall, but I'm the type to go the distance and finish the brawl. They said that it was suicide, that I would die for sure, but I was like the prince of tide in the eye of a storm. I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams when I'm away. To wash away, I explore. I've been all around the world and back, around the world, to find myself, to reach my goals, to find my dreams when I'm away. To wash away, I explore.
Are you ready to officially welcome our hero, Matt Rutherford? Come on, Matt. Well, we're doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Long time no see, you know. It's really strange being here. It's like a dream. Any minute I'm gonna wake up and be in the middle of the ocean, and, you know, which happened over and over and over and over again. So,
how does it feel to be on land? Are you rocking a little bit?
No, you know, it's fun. I'm a very lucky guy when it comes to seasickness and motion sickness, and I can deal with it all, so I have no problems with nothing. Although, I don't know, maybe later. Maybe after a few beers, I'll be rocking.
Did you see any pirates along the way?
Every time I looked in the mirror.
Matt, I've heard from single-handed sailors, they get out there in the ocean and actually have an imaginary boat that they're racing against. Did you have another boat you were racing against?
Oh no, I would have lost. I was going really slow, for the most part, yeah.
And at the doldrums, what was your slowest day run?
Backwards, 60 miles.
You've completed this circumnavigation of the Americas, very strong feet, cheering for you all the way. My big question, what's next?
I need to get a haircut. You guys see this going on?
Thank you all for coming out to welcome Matt home. Matt, well done. All of Maryland is proud of you. Thank you.
I followed your blog.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, great. We have to do a couple media interviews real
Yeah.
Okay, we have to do some media interviews real quick. It's going to take Okay. Oh, I did. No, this is, yes. Yep. Okay.
Matt, what's your regular occupation, and are you going back to it? How do you make it?
A sailor was my occupation. I just quit like an hour ago. So yeah, I don't know. I go back to being a vagabond, I guess.
What's the number one thing you missed that is number one on your agenda now that you're back on land?
Talking to a nice lady? I don't know.
Was there ever a moment where you were all by yourself, things are breaking down, and you're like, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is ridiculous. I can't do it.
I never got to a point where I wanted to turn around, and even if I did, mostly I was so far out in the ocean I couldn't have done it if I wanted to. But there were times when things were breaking and you're cold, you're wet, you're sleeping back.
We all have a gift. We all have a place in this world. As long as you're doing something that you really love doing, then you are living the right life. You know, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is being happy. The point of our existence is to enjoy our existence. Find something that you're passionate about. Find a way that you can add to this world, that you can help this giant group of people living on this round ball, you know, floating out in outer space.
There's a line in Tennyson's Ulysses. I cannot rest from travel. At all times I've enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly. I will drink life to the lees, strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. That's Matt Rutherford.
made a movie that's affirmative, so action. I really wanna practice, but I need a better action. So how can a man with a plan get exactly the chance that he wants by relaxing? When in fact he's a master of rap, such a passionate act in the pond of a bad fish. He combats with the laws of attraction. Speak no bad, do not watch any captions. We know that, but they always distracted. We shifting our axes with wishes of mansion. Asking yourself, what is it for? Will you survive if I take you to war? If it's survival of the fittest, then you better work out more. Hut 1, hut 2, hut 3, hut 4. Tell you what you do when I'm walking through the door. When I'm married to the game, when you die it's divorce. So I'm sure what it's for if I ever went to war. Tell you what I do when I'm walking through the door. When you're married to the game, when you die it's divorce.
You got big plans, you just a talker, man. I'm getting rowdy like a European soccer fan. I spend more time in the ocean than Aquaman. It's time to turn around and start walking, and through my trials and times I found piles of crimes, and I still sit back, write miles of rhymes. Been doing this a long time. Me and Spoke dropped our first CD back in 99. 31, now I'm too old for the game, and commercial rap is overrun by lames. Gold digging dames, Mary Jane holds me very pain, cause I'm barely sane, and that's fairly plain. Worried about a dollar, being a baller. I'm worried about the fact I'm half Caligula, half Caracalla. You can't follow the scholar, I sail around the world in a drop-top Impala. Rhyme so sick that you need a vaccination. Confrontation, proletariat nation, inspiration, commercial rap annihilation, examination, lyrical inspiration, no consideration, a corporate cooperation, spread knowledge all across the nation. Commercial rap annihilation, examination, lyrical inspiration, no consideration, a corporate cooperation, spread knowledge all across the nation, all across the nation.